Welcome to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Bio. Join me as we uncover how setbacks, challenges, and failures can become those pivotal moments that lead to purpose-driven, fulfilled lives. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing stories, insights, and tools to help you reclaim your power and show you how life's biggest challenges are happening for us, not to break us, but to redirect us toward the life we deeply desire. Whether you're here for inspiration, mindset shifts, or just to feel more aligned in your journey, you are in the right place. So whether you're catching a break, powering through, or squeezing in some me time, let's dive into the lessons hidden in life's ups and downs. We're here to embrace every unexpected twist, moving toward a life of passion, purpose, and authenticity. These stories, they are proof that you too can make those shifts happen. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie, and today I am so excited about the conversation that we are going to have with Andrea. We were just chatting that she is across the pond, across the world. So this is her first conversation of the day, as it's probably my fourth or fifth of the day. So I'm super excited to dive into this conversation because we're going to talk all about trusting the unknown, the uncertainty, the life-changing experience that you can have if you make the choice to do so. So, Andrea, I want you to just come on, introduce yourself a little bit. We're not going to dive into all the details of who she is because we want to hear your pivotal moment, your exciting story, and let's go ahead and dive into it.
Awesome. Thank you, Maggie, first and foremost, for having me on your podcast. I'm so happy and honored to be able to come on here and to share, the powerful shifts and the pivotal moments that have actually shaped, everything from me going from unconscious lawyer to energy healer over the past, 2-3 years. So what it is that I am is, well, I'll just do a bit of an introduction. I'm a transformational coach and energy healer for soul searching professionals who are looking to transition out of, the empty motions of life towards more fulfilling and purpose-driven work. And I wouldn't be able to I wouldn't have the guts to come up here to share that transition unless I went through it myself in the most devastating and yet beautiful circumstances. So thank you for having me on.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so excited because you said a couple of things even just in the first 30 seconds of your conversation with me. And I want to dive into exactly what you mean by, it sounds like you said unconscious lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did you say for
soul searching professionals?
Okay, but you said something that was you were living that type of a life.
Yes. Yes.
In the unfulfilled state of mind, and you made a power shift. And so I know you referenced to me, it was in 2020. It sounded as if you were living what people call a dream. You had a life, you had a career, you had the things that went along with that, you had friendships, you had all the things, but you talked about something to me that was about emptiness. And you were feeling as if you had an emptiness about you, even though on the outside, most people probably thought, man, I really want Andrea's life. So let's dive into what were you feeling and how were you able to see that that was what was happening in your life and what kind of feelings was that, and dive into kind of that transition period for you, although people were probably thinking you're crazy.
Oh, yes. The feedback was not great during that transition. But what I can share basically is that, well, let's just start a little bit at the beginning. So, I grew up in this strict Asian household where your only career options, I was given 5, was lawyer, engineer, investment banker, doctor, any other kind of like professional to take in the 5th spot. And so I didn't know anything other than being a professional. I was groomed towards this life. I didn't know any better. And so by the time 2020 arrived, I had been working as a lawyer for 6 years already, and things were going great. I had a fantastic boss. I had great work colleagues, great work environment. Everything was great, great travel, great life, everything. And yet something was just eating up inside. There was just this void that was just growing and growing and growing. And I thought to myself, you know, maybe if I just had more fun. And so every weekend I would go out and have fun with friends and all of that. But then when the pandemic hit, I couldn't do any of that anymore. I couldn't travel. I couldn't have great orgasms. I couldn't go and have great parties and dinners. And when I sat with myself, the work that I had deluded myself into thinking that, oh my gosh, I absolutely love this, it wasn't it. And the void grew bigger and bigger. And, as lawyers and as I guess most professionals, specifically lawyers, we don't do emotional, we don't do vulnerability. It's, we do hard, we do fast, let's just get stuff done and get the result that we want for our client no matter what. Okay. And so to feel this discomfort was horrible, to be honest. Like to feel this emptiness, this void that is growing to become some sort of miserable depression. It was horrible. I didn't know how to deal with it because I was dealing with it for the first time, I think, properly in my life because I had no choice. I can't go anywhere. I have to sit down. I have to look at my desk and I have to go through these emails and go through these affidavits. And I was like, I can't do this. I don't care how much pay they're giving me. It was a moment where I thought, I do not care if you drop $10 million on my feet. I do not care if you turn my body into that of Kim Kardashian's. I do not care if you give me this amazing spouse, which at the time I had recently separated from my husband, but we are best friends. So it was great there as well. Everything was great. And it was just thinking to my mind, I don't care if you gave me all of these things. It's not going to fix this. But I also don't know what was going to fix it. And that was probably the most damning thing, as we go through in life, we're so hardwired for certainty. We want to know and we want to see the yellow brick road that goes to the Emerald City. But in this case, I didn't know what the brick road was. I don't know where that is. I don't know where Emerald City is. I don't know. I'm very new to personal development. And when I say I'm very new, as in I know zero. I don't know what mindset was even. This was 2020. And somehow or other, through just step by step paving my own yellow brick road, I went from clueless, unconscious lawyer experiencing the empty emotions of life to just this sacred calling that when I do it and when I facilitate this work for others, that feeling where you feel radiant from within, that feeling of like you feel the most you have ever felt in your entire life. That juiciness that just stems from all of your cells, it's that. Yeah. And I want to help people do that because life is too short to not experience that.
I am like just sitting over here, like smiling ear to ear, thinking all the things because this is a lot of the type of work that I do. And I think that you and I both have very, very, very different backgrounds and stories. But we also have a lot of similarities. And when you were talking about that cluelessness of like the uncertainty, and you didn't really know what mindset was, and you didn't have this clue, you just knew you had that pit in your stomach or that feeling of, what am I doing? Or how can I not feel fulfilled when I think I have X, Y, and Z, and other people see that? And so for me, I wanted to kind of relate to my story in a way because mine was almost the complete opposite. Mine was complete hell and devastation, and in the pit of the stomach wasn't something that it was just everywhere. And so when you talk about that, it was like you didn't know the true direction. You didn't know where the yellow brick road was going. You didn't know all these things, and either did I. And I think that's what I like to point out is that you don't have to know. You do not have to know because we don't even know what's going to happen in that uncertain or in that certainty of chaos. There could still be, and you talked about that too, where COVID hit and there was a different type for you. So you had an almost like a little redirect that wasn't anybody's thought was coming around, right? So that was a very uncertain, unknown type of our world for everybody.
Yes.
And in that time though, you were able to sit and say, this in my life is not fulfilling. And I need to find what will fill that void. And so I know that that's going to resonate to so many people listening to this. So can you talk a little bit about that when you sat and you said, I don't know the yellow brick road. I don't know mindset. What the heck is self-development? What are all these things that people might be telling us that we should be doing to step into that next version? So when you had that feeling, because I know I did too, I just stepped into it. And I think it's that easy, right?
Yes. Well, actually, how did you step into it? What was your first step, if you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was going to say, I honestly, when I said that out loud, I was like, ooh, let's talk a little bit. Because my first step is going to look a
Yes.
heck of a lot different than your first step. And I think for me, my first step was I literally just pushed play on a meditation. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be thinking, feeling, acting. But I just started to feel. And I think that that's a huge part of it is that you were feeling a certain way and I was feeling a certain way. And it's the feeling that you have to start becoming aware of. And I talk about
Yes.
aware. If you're in my world, you know what I say is always about awareness. But that was my first step is just trying something other than
Yes.
what I was doing in that chaotic hell.
Anything different, right?
Right.
Anything that is different to what you know. And that, I think, whenever we try, not even try, when we decide to take that first step towards the unknown, no matter how small that is, to me, that would have been like, I don't know, baking a pie. But, just something really, something that is just not what you do. And it's not even particularly what you know or think to be your interest. It's just trying something different.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was my housemate at the time. He had been working with this coach. She's actually a healer, and but she says she introduces herself as a coach, and I've seen the positive effects on him. And again, like when he was going through this course, I know nothing, okay, and I wasn't even interested. And what he said to me was, Andy, try her out. I'll even pay for half of your course. And so the fact that he would vouch for it this strongly. So I went with it. And so she's like a spiral practitioner. She did like chakra cleansing. And I don't know what chakras are, okay? And I wasn't interested, okay? I was just in this deep misery that I was just like, I'll try anything. So I'll just show up and then you do your magic and I'll tell you what happened when I was 3 or 5 or whatever it is that comes up. And I think that was my first, in a way, or at least like second initiation into feeling into things, because she would
Mm-hmm.
ask me questions like, okay, what comes to mind, just whatever it is, allow it to be that happened at the age of 4. And then and whatever it is that pops up will be it. And it was just this feeling of, oh, and sometimes it would be uncomfortable memories that I didn't know that I ever had. And so for me, that was that big one step. It was through working with her. And I just showed up. I don't know what she was doing, to be honest, at the time. I just showed up and I answered her questions and, did the homework that she gave me. And that was the starting point. And what was interesting was during the course of that, I made a decision. I think this was maybe in week 4 or 5. I decided I don't want to do law anymore. I don't want to. And the moment I decided, this is the power of energy, right? Because as well as I do that we're all energetic beings, that when I decided and I embodied that person of not being a lawyer, literally a week or 2 later, my boss comes to me and tells me, the business is going slow. And, I think you have a great personality, but I don't know if this work is for you. And he told me about his best friend who studied law with him and is now, owns a franchise of coffee beans called Merlot Coffee. And then he was trying to guide me to that. And a few more weeks later, I was made redundant, huge severance package. So I
Yahoo!
even got the money to start to start whatever it is, to start creating the next brick of the yellow brick road. So yeah, that was it was all in all, it's a series of micro decisions,
Yeah.
but there will be that one pivotal decision, which was I decided I don't want to be a lawyer anymore.
And it's oddly strange how when you made the one decision, there was other things that started to happen. And I know that that's happened in my life too, where
Yes.
I wanted to make the decision and then someone else who was in charge more had made the decision for me. And I thought, well, wait
Hmm.
a second. I'm the one that wanted that. But now that you
Yes.
told me, hold on, wait a minute, I need to figure this out. And so I want to talk a little bit about too, when you had these moments, because I
Mm.
actually speak about this and everybody jaws like fully wide open and their eyes go this big because we make 35,000 decisions a day
Hmm.
on average. And
Yes.
most of them are very small, some are
Yeah.
life-changing, but most of them just kind of fade into the background. Now, this one
Mm.
for you was truly a moment where you had to say, I don't want this. Now, what I
Yes.
want you to kind of talk about, because you said this in the very beginning as well,
Mm.
is you were brought up in a family where it was lawyer, doctor, maybe something else. I can't remember, but let's just
Engineer.
say those higher kind of
Yeah.
profile businesses. And I know I've been asked a lot of times, well, when are you going to get a real job or what is your real job?
Oh God, the real
Worst
job
question.
question.
The worst question. It's the worst feeling because when you're leading through purpose and passion, and that yellow brick road that we have talked about is coming from right here, knowing that you are on a higher path and a higher purpose to help and fulfill, you closed your eyes and even said, I want to help more people do this.
Mm.
And I think that's what's so important is that anyone listening can relate to the fact that they've probably had a mom or a dad or a grandparent or someone in their life that has said, you have to have a certain type of job, you have to have a certain type of status, and anything else is a dream.
Yes.
But let's reference that and talk about that and pull that back a little bit and understand that in your heart, if you have something that is saying, I want to do this, I don't want to do this, we all tend to think, what's everybody else going to think? So I know in your
Yes.
heart, you had to think, well, my parents told me I have to have this, but I
Mm.
want, woo, this.
Yes.
And so talk about that because I know there's so many people that are probably thinking, well, Andrea, how did you do that? How did you do it? How did you just say, I don't want to? And even though it felt scary as hell, or you really weren't sure, tell us about how you just
Mm.
made that decision.
I think the thing that made it so easy is when something eats at you hard enough and something eats at you deep enough, you're going to come to a crossroad where you
Mm,
decide, is this the moment when I am going to take my power back?
mm,
Because as we grow up, we are conditioned for approval, right? That's why we people please. That's why we pander to other people's needs because we want community, we want belonging, want acceptance. Because to die alone or to be alone and rejected is so incredibly painful. But the thing is, maybe that worked when you're a child and we need someone to kind of nurture us and raise us. But then when it comes to a point where we are now in a position where we're taking care of ourselves, that kind of conditioning, that kind of need no longer exists. We still want community and we still want acceptance and belonging, but we want soul aligned community, soul aligned acceptance. But the fear that and the conditioning and the programming that has been instilled in us is so deep that sometimes we have to suffer so much and tolerate so much until we hit a threshold, until we hit our own personal limit. And then it's like, okay, is this the time? And I think for me at that point in 2020, that was the time for me. It was like, okay, I have achieved happiness, right? I have done all the things that are meant to give me happy. I have followed the instructions of people who supposedly knew better. But it was all wrong. And I thought to myself, I felt so weird. I was like, maybe it doesn't apply to me or something. It seems to apply to everyone else. But why does it not apply to me? And then it was that moment of when I had allowed the fear to shift, right, through working with that coach, to working with that healer. Then it was like, you know what? This is where I take my power back. This is where I decide to honor my needs, Because if I have followed the rules and I followed the instructions and it's not working, then it's time for me to make my own way. It's time for me to make my own rules. And so then I started to make my own rules. I decided I'm going to follow my joy, only my joy at any given moment. If something is not bringing me joy, if something is not going to feel like an adventure for me, then I'm not doing it. And I'm going to allow myself to take everything just a step at a time, whilst remaining completely detached and unattached to the best of my ability from the final outcome. And so that was the step that I decided to take. I just thought, it's time to honor me. My needs are important too. What I want is important too. My inner peace, my happiness, my journey, that is really important too. So how is it that I could have outsourced all of that to someone else who is not walking my life, not standing in my shoes? And so that was the pivotal moment, yeah, for me, when I decided, that's it. I live for me.
Yeah, and I think I want to talk to that too, because we all think the power, taking your power back, and we think the things, and we think about, well, I want joy and I want this, but we always tend to think about what does the other person think or need or want?
Yes.
But why do we not put ourselves first? And I asked this question a couple weeks ago. Who deserves a happier, more fulfilling life? And I wanted them to look around and see. And if that first person that came to your mind wasn't yourself,
Yeah.
that's the feedback you need. That's the type of feedback that every single one of us listening to this right here, right now, that's the feedback. When you are worried more about everybody else being happier, more
Mm,
fulfilled, maybe thinking it's not worth it for you to try to do that. Oh, those people have special woo-woo powers that actually have taken their power back and are living through their passion and their purpose. It's not for me, but it's for everybody. And let's talk about that a little bit, because I think we have very similar ideas on this. We are all destined to live that happier, more fulfilling life. We all have a dream on our heart. We all have a purpose in our body. And you talk about energy work.
mm,
For me, I just feel like it came to me when I was more in
mm,
silence, or when I felt like I say silence is the loudest noise you have to hear most oftentimes. And when you can truly pull yourself out of the world, right? Of
mm,
judgment, of failures, of all the things, the societal things that we're supposed to like fit into, and
mm,
you sit back and you think, what do you want out of your life? So you said you hit this breaking point. I call it,
mm.
rock bottom. So for some people, the breaking point, the
Yes.
bucket, I'm done moment. What,
Yes.
when you think about that, and I know that everybody out there is in their car listening or walking through and doing this, because every single person agrees with us and every
Mm,
single person understands it, but it's that power shift. It's the pivotal moment that has to happen.
yes.
And when you talked about that, you did some energy work, you did some stuff, you started to say, I am in charge. And I want to talk
Mm,
about that because we allow people, places, circumstances, and experiences to hold us hostage of the happier, more fulfilling life. Do you agree with that?
mm. Oh, I absolutely agree. And again, it comes back to what I'd said before, is because if we want to talk about where this comes from, we were talking about caveman days where being part of a tribe was a form of protection,
Yeah.
but that's not where we are anymore. And in terms of wanting to help people, I feel from what I gathered from whenever I meet people who always want to help, they have the kindest, sweetest hearts, and they feel that they want to help and they want to, it's just that they go into the point of being self-sacrificing, whereas really the best way to help people is to be from an overflow of love. And the only reason you're able to give from overflow, because that is the purest, most untainted kind of frequency that you can offer people. The only reason you're able to pour from an overflow is if you have filled yourself up, filled your own cup with so much love, with everything that the world is able to offer you, with everything that you're able to offer yourself. That is the best way to actually help others. Not from a place of needing validation or needing seeking evidence of worthiness. It's from an overflow of abundance, overflow of love, overflow of wealth, overflow of health, right?
Yeah, and I want to talk to that too because I think a lot of times we're all, well, we may not be, but we're not on a pedestal either, right? But we
No.
understand what it feels like to have the full cup to overflow from. Most
Yes.
people are sitting here going, well, mine is bone dry, Andrea. Mine is this way, Maggie. I don't know how to even get a drip into my cup to start overflowing. And I think that's something that we can both talk about on our own experiences is I was bone dry, but just by taking the one step, like I said, even turning on a meditation or listening to my favorite song, taking a bath, hanging out,
Yes.
going out in nature, people think it takes so much to start filling your cup. It's about, oh, I have to go spend money and I have to do this and I have to get my hair done, my nails done, I have to have a massage. I have to... No, there's so much freeness to being free.
Yes.
You just have to understand what is it? Most people don't even know what makes them feel better. And half the time, it could just be sipping on that cup of coffee without scrolling on your phone.
Yes, please.
Right?
Amen.
Yes. And so it's so funny because we think we're constantly trying to figure out, we're making it harder on ourselves. And I am guilty as charged with a lot of things. So I always like to say that I am not on a pedestal because I learn something about myself every single day. It's not the
Yes.
destination I'm going for, it's the journey that is taking me through that to understand how I can show up for myself in a different way every day. I still have times where I struggle big time. When you're going through life, there's always pivotal power shifts, redirects, all the types of things. I like to say life is never going to stop lifing. So when we talk about that, and you kind of were like, with just the sip of coffee without scrolling, what do you think that that does? Because for me, you talked about validation, you talked about those things. What do you think when we're sipping on our coffee and we're trying to fill our cup? But we're outside looking at what everybody else is doing. What in all reality is that creating?
Well, I feel that for one, if we're sipping our cup and we are not doom scrolling or just scrolling at all, ultimately we are bringing presence back.
Mm,
Isn't that what we're looking for? And ultimately, we're bringing presence back. We are choosing what nourishes our own soul. And so when we choose to nourish when we choose to nourish our own soul, that makes us happy. That raises our overall vibration compared to if we're looking at what everyone else is doing. The world, especially with social media, especially with AI, you talk about YouTube, TikTok, especially, the world is trying so hard. It is built to draw our attention outwards.
mhm.
It is built to draw our attention to look at what other people are doing, to see what aspirational figures are in front of us, when really all we need to do to fill our own cup is to just look within. And I love what you talked about when you mentioned the meditation, that one tiny little act of choosing you, of going within. How peaceful did that feel, even if it was just for 5 minutes? And I love that you mentioned that. The reason for that is because in early 2021, when I started this journey of learning about personal development, I just felt this nudge that, you know what about we meditate every single day? Just 5 minutes, And literally a few days later, a friend that I hadn't even met, it was an online friend that I met through like a Facebook group. She contacted me out of nowhere. And she said, hey, I'm starting like Deepak Chopra's 21-day guided meditation. I'm doing it as, part of a group, would you like to join? And I was like, yeah, okay. It's just amazing how when you start to choose you, and that's what I mean by filling your cup, is when we talk about self-care things or not looking at other people, it's choosing you. And when you start to choose you, the universe and the world, energy, reality, creator, God, source, however you want to call it, it will bend its reality to match you.
Yes. And I'm going to capitalize off of that because I was like, oh,
Yes.
that hit me so hard because it's so true. And I think it's crazy because a lot of times we think like when we're taking actions and we're doing stuff, it's insane how fast reality or source energies, all the things you were just saying, like it literally shows up in front of you. Now, the synchronicities, the beauty, the things that you need to see
Mm,
are out, or excuse me, are inside, not outside. And you just talked about
yes.
that. You said the world wants us to look out. It's like that movie that says, don't look up and all the things. It's like, don't look outside, look inside and align
Yes.
with yourself and your own passions. Now, here's the thing because we're all born into, well, what does mommy and daddy want us to do? What are the things that
Yes.
this wants to do? And there's some of us that are type the line. There's some of us that want to pave our own brick road. There's some of us that want to pave the brick road and then jump to the other side. Oh, and jump back to the other side. And
Mm-hmm.
then, run and then all the things. Me. But we have to realize that when we're looking out or we're taking that and going out and looking and thinking all the things, we're not truly sitting with what we need and what we want, like you have mentioned. And
Mm,
so to kind of like pull this all in together, because I know that you talked about your power shift moment, you talked about the pivotal changes, you've talked about the decisions, you talked about having parents
mm,
who saw a whole different life for you, a whole different
mm-hmm.
future, and they're probably still a little like, holding back. Let's see if this works for her because that's just normal. That's
Mm-hmm.
the patterns that they have been living. And I think I actually wrote this down. It's the surrendering your old identities and taking the leap of faith. So to tie this all in, let's talk about
Mm-hmm.
how you had this like picturesque person you were supposed to become,
To be.
to be. You had this pivotal moment that said, I can't do this anymore. And I know if I'm going to be real honest, I can call every person out that's listening to this. You've had that feeling in your life. So start looking inward, like we're telling you, and start to understand that you have to create the life that makes you fired up. It doesn't have to look or make sense to anybody else. I know that for a
Absolutely.
fact, me walking away from this business and then this business and then this, and now to try to say, I am not doing it, I'm going this way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
creating my path, and it might look like this to you guys. But so let's just kind of when you talk about that, the surrendering, the process, because we've talked about what you thought and how you felt and how your parents might think of this, all the things, but you still chose you. So
Mm-hmm.
you had to surrender to the old, outdated beliefs, identities, all the things, and take the
Mm-hmm.
leap of faith. So to tie this all in together for everybody out there,
Yes.
what did you do to surrender to the process? You've talked about it a little bit, but like pull this all in together for us so that we can understand it's not that freaking scary. I mean, it's scary,
Well,
don't get me wrong.
I was about to say, it was quite scary, but it's
Fear it,
not. It's
right.
but you're not gonna die. It's not that level of scary.
We think fear and we think, "Ugh." We think move, we go. "Ugh." So let's talk about that.
Yes.
You had to surrender to the fear. You had to surrender
Yes.
to the process. You had to
Mm-hmm.
trust the unknown. And that's what I talk
Yes.
all about is that I didn't know what was going to happen when I walked away from
Yeah.
a decade-long life that I had
Mm-hmm.
created.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, but I also knew that if I stayed there, I would just die
Die.
slower internally over time. And so let's talk about that to kind of wrap this up and give the listener that insight of how the hell do you do it?
Well, it comes with the awareness. And that's
Love
similar
that word.
to, yeah, yeah, awareness. And similar to what you mentioned, Maggie, where you said, like, you knew that if you stayed, you would die slowly, bit by bit, bit by bit. And that was the moment for me as well, where I thought to myself, okay, if I stay, and it's very comfortable in the discomfort, okay?
Mhm.
But if I stay, I will 100% be miserable. Where if I took my chances out there, as scary as it is, but there was probably going to be a 50% chance that I might hit something, okay? And that 50% could become 100%, which it has now. And so, number one, it starts with having that awareness. And number two, it's then the next step will be, are you willing to choose yourself? Are you willing to back yourself in making that decision?
I'm only laughing because I want you to continue, but I have to like reference that my technique I talk about is aware. And it's so
Yes.
funny because the second the W is willingness. So just keep going because I'm
Yes.
like, ah,
Oh,
this
beautiful.
is so good.
Yes. Are you willing to back yourself? So in my case, imagine telling my Asian parents who have invested in me and groomed me a particular way that, at that time, I decided I didn't want to do law and I'm going to be a social media influencer. Can you imagine what that would have been like to have that conversation? They'll be like, social media influencer? What's that? And I'm like, you just show up online and then you do sponsorships and all that kind of thing. So what was I talking about? So it was awareness. Are you willingness to back yourself? And then the next thing is, what is one small step? What is one small piece of aligned action that you could take? Just the small one, whether it's to meditate or decide, I'm going to start an Instagram account, which at the time that was what it was for me. I said, okay, this is what I like to do. Let's start an Instagram account and then kind of see where it goes. And then from that point onwards, every single time through following my joy, allowing myself to be happy, just allowing myself to be happy through all, then allowing, and if we know that if all of us are energy and we are always going to attract everything that is a vibrational match to us, the happier I became, the more I attracted all the things that were appealing to me. And I just decided to go for it. And because I already made that one pivotal shift, however many months ago, it becomes easier and easier and easier to make that shift. And the deeper I got into personal development, the deeper I got into who I am, into spirituality, the more I came to realize, wow, life outside of the matrix is so good. And all we have to do is start with that. I'm not even going to tell you what is going to happen at the end, because what is going to happen at the end, your particular destiny for you is going to be so different. The path for you to get there is going to be so different. If someone told me in 2021, oh, Andy, you're going to be a transformational coach for soul searching professionals and you're going to do energy healing work, I would be like, no, what are you talking about? Do not come near me. I don't know who you are, but this looks wrong and this feels unsafe. I don't want to talk about this. I don't even want to meet you. And somehow or other, 2 years later, through just focusing on the one step in front of me, through just focusing on what brings you true joy at any given moment, you're here. You're going to get there. And one day you're going to look behind and be like, holy shit, how did I get here? And I also hope that you give yourself, one last thing. I hope that you give yourself also the time. Take some time to, at every stage of where you are, even if it's a very messy, chaotic stage, because Lord knows I've had that. This road is not a cruisy one.
It's not chaos. That's weird.
So at every stage of where you're at, especially during the chaotic, messy stages, give yourself time to honor that stage, because nothing, I promise you, nothing is permanent. Your emotions are not permanent. Your thoughts are not permanent. Who you are, because we are constantly evolving, is not permanent. The only reason something becomes permanent is if you latch onto something. And even then, it means that you're going to sink deeper. So the stage of where you're at is also not permanent. You either go up or go down. It's completely up to you. But you're always moving, even when it doesn't feel like it. Yeah.
I love that. Seriously, I've loved every single thing that we've talked about. And because when you were going through the aware, I'm like, did you read my Instagram page? Have you looked through how I literally walk people through? Because every little thing you said was the willingness and then the alignment. I'm like, this is so weird. But this is the type of shit that I'm talking about and you're talking about, is when you are in alignment and when you are serving from a place of here and you're not validating and looking from all the outside and thinking different things, you align with the people, the places, and the experiences that are on your higher self level. I just heard this the other day.
Absolutely.
Which elevator level are you on? And if you're here, like, get back in the elevator and
Yes.
go up. You know,
Yes.
you just said that, up or down. Like, don't get in the elevator and go down, get in the elevator and go up. But you have to surround yourself with the other types of people who understand your flow, who
Yes.
understand what you want out of your life. And so, um, I want to make sure that with this episode kind of closing and just kind of learning a little bit about you, I know you've talked about a transformational coach, you've energy healing and those kinds of things, but I want the audience to understand now, where the heck can I find more of Andrea and how can I connect with you? But I also want you to leave the message, or leave the audience with a message, um, of what we've talked about, the steps, we've talked about the things, but I have this, like, I call them mic drop moments. So
Mm-hmm.
people who've listened, there's mic drop moments from every single guest that is literally a first step thing. And it could be a
Mm-hmm.
mantra for you. It could be whatever it is that you have on your heart right now that you could leave the audience with to say, go after the life that you know you truly deserve and desire. Because that is as plain and simple as it freaking gets. So,
Yes.
where can we find you, Andrea? And I know that there's going to be many more episodes with us coming back and chatting, because I think we have so many things, but I think if tension
Yes.
stands are about like, okay, we need to stop. At least I know that in our world, right? We're so fast acting. We got to get on to something else. So
Yes.
tell us where we can find you, and then also to just give us some sort of piece of that mic drop moment of wisdom that we can say, holy shit, okay, I'm moving forward.
Okay, so the first place to find me, well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Andrea Fung. Facebook is also Andrea Fung. Or if you want this beautiful photos and reels, you can come to my Instagram account, the Andrea Fung. So those would be the main three ways to actually find me. And if I were to have my mic drop moment based on everything that I've talked about, everything based on my personal experiences, our personal experiences, I would say you just have to surrender the projections of leave the projections of your limited mind at the door.
Mm.
And honestly, surrender to receive everything that is beyond your wildest imagination. And that is my mic drop moment. Take it from someone who didn't even know what mindset was to balancing chakras 2 years later.
And people are like, chakra, what? No. So
Exactly.
I really appreciate
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
That's the point. Exactly. That's the point.
That is the type of power shift you have to have, though, is the surrendering to the process, surrendering to understanding that life does not have to look like it does or feel like it does. And you have to make the decisions that have to become aligned with what you fully believe. And it doesn't mean that you have to believe it's fully possible for you right now. You just
Yes.
have to believe that it's fully possible for anyone and everyone in this entire world. Mic drop moment. It's possible for everybody.
Yes.
No one is put on this. I mean, we all come from different walks of life. We all come different. We're in different countries right now. And we're
Yes.
talking about the same thing. So start realizing that it is up to you to become aware and make the decisions to change your life. And so thank you so much for this. I cannot wait to have you again on the show. This was so
I'm
good.
excited.
I wish I lived in Australia right now so I could come get my chakras aligned. But please make sure to, follow Andrea, look for her and connect with her. And thank you so much for this amazing episode, Andrea. I had such a great time with you today.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for having me on. And I'm so excited for round 2 of this podcast conversation, continuing to goodness which detour we're going to go to. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to The Power Shift. I hope today's episode inspired you to see setbacks as stepping stones and embrace the beauty in the chaos. Real growth happens when we align with our true selves and live unapologetically. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more incredible people like you discover the show. Until next time, keep making those power shifts and step boldly into the life that's authentically yours.